Right, okay. You lot, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can catch all of our videos. And if you're really interested in the Krays, join our private Facebook group, Krays Crime Lords of London. You'll find over 1,000 videos and thousands of images. We're moderated and friendly. Come and give us a try.
It was summertime, and Ron, Alfie Miller and I decided we would spend a day at Chingford. Remember, this was 50 years ago, and then, unlike today, we could be in unspoilt countryside within a short walk from the station. Each of us carried a few sandwiches, a bit of cake, a bottle of water and some sherbet powder to mix in it. The sweeping fields and woods were a kid's paradise. We searched little streams for fish, climbed trees, fed some horses with our bread crusts, and as I'd taken my slug gun with me, whooped and hollered up and down the grassy slopes as we played cowboys and Indians. By 4 o'clock, we'd run out of food and were worn out, so we set off for home. On the train journey back to Liverpool Street, typical kids, we didn't know what to get up to next. We fought and wrestled each other, bounced on the seats, and Ron and I lifted Alfie up and stuck him in the netting luggage holder for a laugh. Then I had the bright idea of taking a pop at the irresistible targets flashing by the window with my slug gun. The gun was a .177 Diana air rifle and was one step up from being a toy. Short black pressed steel barrel with a light-coloured wooden stock. It had the velocity of a pea shooter. It could make a decent twang if it hit a metal sign or post, and that would be good enough for us. Not that we expected to see or hear the slug hitting its target, because by that time we'd be half a mile up the track, but it was good fun. That was until we stepped off the train and were immediately collared by two large official-looking men, railway detectives. What could I say? I was still holding the rifle. If I'd known what was coming, I could have thrown it out of the window, but instead I was caught red-handed. The biggest man took the gun from me and said, "Well, Billy the Kid, you won't be needing this in Borstal." We were taken to an office, made to sit on a hard bench, and then, one by one, questioned by these two bullies while a statement was taken. Can you picture the three of us? 10 years old, scruffy and dishevelled from playing all day, and all thoroughly frightened by the threat of Borstal. Young we might have been, but we'd heard plenty of stories from older boys who'd been away of how tough these places were, but worse was to come. Instead of letting us go, we were to be escorted home. Alfie was taken in a separate car. We were put in the back of a large Wolseley and driven off to Valence Road. Aunt Rose and Mum were having a cup of tea when we arrived home, and I can still picture their faces when the railway detective told them we would have to appear in court for dangerously discharging a gun in a public place. I think that if I'd hurt someone or been caught stealing, I could have accepted the heavyweight treatment we were being subjected to. 10 or not, I knew that if you were caught breaking the law, you had to swallow it. But all we were guilty of were childish high spirits, and for that we had the threat of being sent away hanging over our heads for a month. Mum was very quiet for those 4 weeks, and not once did I hear her singing "Somewhere Over the Rainbow," as she often used to when washing up or dusting the front room. On the specified day, we made our way to Toynbee Hall Juvenile Court, a large building at the bottom of Commercial Road. Aunt Rose came along to give Mum moral support, but as soon as we were taken into the large room used as a court, they couldn't hold back their tears. After deliberations that seemed to go on for hours, we were given a stern lecture, bound over to keep the peace and allowed to go. Mum and Aunt Rose cried all the way home, but this time because they were happy. I felt nothing but hatred for the police, railway or not, and the establishment that had put me and my family through a month of emotional hell. In my mind, they had become and would remain the enemy. My young mind couldn't comprehend such a thing as the establishment, but later on, I would realize that this experience was my first conflict with those faceless powers that be. A conflict that was to become greater. These days, though, with a bit more wisdom and tolerance, I've made my peace with the law and no longer see myself in conflict with it. Up until about that time, Ron and I would cross the road rather than face confrontation or be drawn into a fight. Nothing to do with being frightened of the opposition, because we were both pretty confident in ourselves. It was more like we didn't feel we had anything to prove with unnecessary violence. That changed one day when we were playing by the boating lake in Victoria Park. My memory is vague about what we were doing, probably floating twigs or empty cigarette packets in the water as boats. Next minute, 5 kids of about our own age came along and started taking the piss. Being twins made us different enough to stand out. We looked alike, and we thought alike, so we had no need to confer before attacking the 5 as one person. If we'd carried more weight, they would have been seriously hurt. As it was, 4 of them got bloody noses and bruised chins, while the 5th took off before we got to him. The others didn't stay long either. Once they got what they took to be a safe distance from the 2 of us, they stopped and shouted to us, "We'll get our gang onto you." As there was 5 of them, I'm not sure how many they felt were needed to sort us out. This was our first victory over greater odds. It was a good feeling. A few days later, Ron had a fight with another kid at York Hall Baths in Bethnal Green. I don't know what he said to Ron. All I saw was the other fella get a vicious right to the head that split his eyebrow open. It doesn't take much blood in water to look like a murder, and there was a bit of a panic around them until the not-so-cocky kid was dragged out bleeding and crying. Because of our involvement with boxing, we thought of fighting as squaring up, sticking to a set of rules and punching our way out of trouble no matter how many we were up against. We were good sportsmen, but perhaps we were naive in terms of battling outside the ring. This would soon change. Some friends of ours were having a row with another teenage gang. We weren't too concerned as they seemed evenly matched, but then the other gang started using their feet. One of our friends went down, and 3 pairs of boots were kicking him from head to toe. This escalation from what we considered fair into foul happened in seconds. It goes without saying that Ron and I joined in pretty quick, and although against our principles, we put the boot in. Talking about the incident as we were getting ready for bed that night, I found that Ron had felt the same way as I did when we witnessed the brawl, that it was disgusting and cowardly that anyone could consider using their feet in a fight. But this was to be another turning point in our lives, for we both decided then that if the rules had changed, then we would change with them, but with an extra vow. If that's what it took to come out on top, then we would kick harder and better than any of our adversaries. We had embraced some street fighting philosophy. Do as you would be done by, but do it first and with more force, or all is fair in war. Strangely enough, this newfound taste for fighting and giving violence to those who asked for it never affected our boxing. We kept the 2 styles separate and in the ring stuck by the rules. One day, Brother Charlie took us to the Rupert Browning Institute near Elephant and Castle. To be able to join, you had to prove yourself capable of handling yourself. So, like an audition, we had to do a few rounds with one of the members. According to Charlie, the trainers who watched us were well impressed and wanted us to join straight away. Before we went back to the club the next time, Charlie generously took us to a sports shop in Ludgate Circus. The memory of that shop stays with me until this day. The clean smell of new leather and waxes and the exciting equipment mesmerized my young eyes. Weights, punch bags, medicine balls, but best of all was the section with footwear, because our brother was buying us a brand new pair of black leather boxing boots. We were so proud of these prized possessions, we couldn't wait to get home so we could show our parents. Our trainer at the Rupert Browning Institute was an ex-pro by the name of Charlie Sims. With his broken nose, scar tissue over both eyes, and 2 oddly shaped cauliflower ears, his looks were a contradiction of the fact that he was, or had been, an excellent defensive fighter. He taught us a lot, and in no time, we were getting mentions in the East London Advertiser. In a safe place outside the prison, I have 4 thick scrapbooks containing cuttings referring to Ron and myself from the age of 12. It's been many years since I last looked through these books, but I know that if they were brought in to me today, and I were to flick through the yellowed cuttings of our short boxing career, the same pride and excitement I felt then would come flooding back. As I sat at the kitchen table with scissors and paste in the 1940s, I could not have imagined the pieces I carefully cut from the local sports pages would one day be dwarfed by an avalanche of newsprint as we became infamous in the eyes of the media. Starting off with a win in the Hackney Area Championships, I followed this with a unanimous verdict in the prestigious London Schoolboy Boxing Championships. This win made me very proud, and I could see my dreams of becoming world champion getting closer and closer. From there, I went on to fight in the Great Britain Schoolboy Championships, which meant a trip to Leeds, where the fight was to be held. I put everything I had into that boxing match. I was confident, I kept my cool, put up a good defense, and as I attacked my opponent in flurries of good punches, the points were clocking up in my head as if on a taxi meter. But at the final bell, the other boy's hand was held up as the winner on points, and I felt gutted. I was sportsman enough to take a beating, and it wasn't the first fight I'd lost, but this time I knew in my heart the title should have gone to me. I blamed the decision on those northern judges who were biased against London boxers. This wasn't just my personal opinion. Even people from the local area told me they thought the judges were out of order. As an amateur boxer, I lost a total of 5 matches out of 55, and as a professional won 7 out of 7. I got as far as the Great Britain semi-final at Wembley Arena, but on the day could not make the weight, so had to miss the fight. In one of these competitions, I had 3 fights in one night. In the first bout, I won in the first round, the second in the second round, and won the third on points. Ron's record was very similar to my own, and he had equal success. In the London Schoolboy Boxing Championships, we had both reached the finals 3 years running. Because our talents were equal, although our styles were completely different, we had seen off the competition so well that one day we faced each other in the ring. As twins, we were mentally closer than ordinary brothers, yet when the bell went for the start of 3 2-minute rounds, we were strangers and got stuck into each other like tigers. By the second round, we were both bleeding, me from his slugging, almost cobble fighter's attack, and him from my more boxing-like punches. Just before the third round, I glanced ringside and saw Mum with her hands over her face and Dad and Charlie frowning. I could tell none of them were enjoying the spectacle. The final round was bloodier still because neither of us would give the other an inch. We were evenly matched and given equal punishment. In the end, I got the verdict, though it must have been as close as you could get. Afterwards, Mum laid into both of us for hurting each other the way we had, but I think this was her way of letting out the fear she had felt while watching us. She told us that a couple of times she got out of her seat to stop us, but Dad had stopped her. Another time, Ron and I fought at a fairground, but Mum wasn't there, and it wasn't half as bloody. Ron and I went to a fun fair that had been set up on a bomb site in Turin Road, off Bethnal Green Road. We wandered among colourful rides to a background of loud organ music, tried our hands on the coconut shies and rifle range, until at the far end we came across a boxing booth. This was set up in a marquee, and out front was a wooden stage painted all round with figures of fighters. On the stage stood Alf Stewart throwing out challenges to the public, plus a lot of showman's banter to whip the crowd up and encourage them to take on one of his fighters. These fighters, all ex-boxers and well past their prime, would stand behind Alf as he introduced them by name: Slasher Warner, Les Haycock, Johnny Cunningham and the Osborne brothers, Steve and Buster. Each of these men looked like the stereotypical boxer who has passed his prime. Their circumstances were terrible too, as purses were not like they are today. Prize money for some of the best crowd pullers might only have been £300, which even translated to today's terms was no fortune. When the limelight had faded, most of them ended up as tappers, which meant they were skint and spent the rest of their lives tapping others for a drink or a couple of shillings. The alternative was to tour the booths as these men did, taking and handing out punishment for £1 a round. Though they were big men with formidable looks, lumpy hands, broken noses and faces lined with scar tissue, Often they were in their 60s, and no matter how seasoned they were, facing tough dockers or draymen in their 20s, perhaps 10 times in a night, must have been hard to keep up with. Still, this attraction was right up our street, so we handed over our money and entered the booth. The smell of the place was unforgettable. Blood, sweat, leather, and the pungent odor of wintergreen liniment. The atmosphere was charged with excitement too, as under a pall of cigarette smoke and the glare of arc lights, the crowd shuffled in anticipation. With a full house, Alf would close the canvas doors, jump in the ring, and go into his spiel for challenges. Most of his patter would be directed at likely lads around the ringside. His experience in crowd psychology would tell him that a direct challenge to an onlooker would be hard to turn down in front of his mates. Keep on your feet for 3 short rounds with one of my boys, and I'll give you £5, 100 shiny shillings. Now how bad can that be? That was well over a week's wages for the average working man. Once a combatant had climbed into the ring, one of the booth fighters would follow him. This first time it was Slasher, but before the bell went, Alf made a tongue-in-cheek apology. Now remember, if Mr. Warner here infringes the rules, you must not judge him too harshly, because as a street fighter and bookie's bodyguard, he's never heard of Queensberry rules. They got a laugh from the crowd. The first young bloke lasted almost to the end of round 1, and I'm sure the timekeeper held off ringing the bell until Slasher had finished kicking the fella in the ribs as he lay on the floor. Some of the crowd booed, but most screamed in delight. This is what they'd paid to see, and so it went on, fight after fight. Ron and I loved it. Then Alf said, "Right, now for something different. If any of you lot want to settle a difference or have a bit of fun, get up in this ring, fight it out, and I'll see you all right." Ron and I looked at each other and didn't have to say a word. We just put our hands up and climbed into the ring. They gloved me up and sorted us out. A big cheer erupted from the crowd when Alf introduced us as these up-and-coming twins, Reg and Ron Kray, are going to give an exhibition of how it should be done. Once again, we went at each other hammer and tongs and gave the punters their money's worth. Ron's nose was bleeding and I had a vivid bruise on my cheekbone, and we were so carried away our faces were bright red. Because it was just a bit of entertainment, there was no winner or loser, but if points had been given, I think a draw could have been the only result. Alf gave us 7 shillings and 6pence each, patted us on the shoulders and said, "Anytime you boys want to put on a show again, I'll find a slot for you." We ran home and handed the money over to Mum, having made sure we had cleaned off the blood and tidied ourselves up in case she got upset again. When I was telling Uncle Joe about it, he said, "I remember one of those blokes when they were a bit younger. They were in the booth then and very popular with the crowd, but a little scam they worked was that the MC would come out and say, 'Ladies and gentlemen, bit of bad news. Somebody's stolen one of the fighters' wallets and left him with nothing.' Straight away, the hat would go round a sympathetic crowd and the take would be split between the fighters. It was only done every now and again, but it never failed." Many years later, I was walking along the Roman road, and a shuffling grey-haired old man was unsteadily making his way towards me. What caught my attention was his distinctive turned-up nose that had obviously been broken a few times. Just at the moment, I recognized him as Slasher Warner. He turned into the local doss house, a place where down-and-outs could get a bed for a few shillings. What I was thinking of at that time, I don't know. But the fact that I didn't follow him and give him a few quid to help out has remained one of the many regrets of my life. I never saw him again, which was a great shame, as he was a colourful character who deserved better in his last days. Okay, friends, that's all for now. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please join our Facebook Facebook group. It's called Krays Crime Lords of London. We're a friendly moderated group with over 1,000 Kray and other celebrated gangster videos available for view. There's also thousands of images in the photos sections. The link for the group is in the YouTube description section. I hope we see you there soon.
Leave a like and subscribe.